Welcome to Beverly Unitarian Church Online Worship. My name is Pat Hoffman. I'm a worship associate, and I am so glad to welcome you to worship today. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation of children, youths, and adults of many races, religions, and secular identities, genders, sexual orientations, educations, incomes, abilities, and traditions. Here, we celebrate a diversity of beliefs, striving always to make room for more. All of you is sacred. All of you is welcome. Whatever your past or present, we invite you to walk into the future with us. Like other Unitarian Universalist congregations, we affirm 7 principles which are not doctrine or dogma, but rather our shared values and moral guide. To learn more about these principles, please visit the website of our denomination, www.uua.org. Our minister is the Reverend David Schwartz. Today, we are fortunate to welcome as our speaker Monica Kling-Garcia, and as our musicians, our own members Greg Lawler and Renee Wilson. We especially welcome visitors and hope you'll stay for the virtual coffee hour after the service on Zoom. We look forward to the day when we can also meet you in person. Due to the coronavirus, we are forced to distance ourselves physically, but we can stay connected. In addition to our Sunday worship, we have several groups who meet by phone or Zoom, both for community and church business. To get more involved, check out our Facebook page and our website. You can contact the office to be added to our monthly newsletter and our Friday email blast, or to be connected to Reverend David for pastoral care. And now, let us join together in spirit and prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
Good morning, Beverly Unitarian Church. I'm Monica Kling-Garcia, the ministerial intern at First Unitarian Church of Chicago. I am so grateful to be here worshiping with you all today. This morning, I'd like to call us into this virtual space of ours with some centering words. I invite you to be present here and now to your space, your surroundings, and also to how we are all connected together, even though we are apart. Our words for reflection this morning come from the Reverend Pamela Romancic. She writes, "Why community? To remember that one is not a whole number, that we need both roots and wings, that strength comes from relationship and mutuality, that we know life in and through one another." I now invite you, if you have a chalice or a candle at home, or even a lamp, to join us in our chalice lighting this morning. Remember that wherever you are is sacred space. For you, bring church with you wherever you go. Today, we light our chalice as a symbol of this community, all the ways that we have stayed connected to each other and supported each other. May the flames of all our chalices represent that church is more than just a space to meet and gather. Church is you, it is me, it is all of us together.
Please join together in our opening hymn, Kindred.
Kindred, we now meet to worship, reaching out through screen and phone. Though we dwell in isolation, we don't have to be alone. Worshipping beyond our building, our connections no less real. Though we cannot meet in person, covenant unites us still. Siblings share a song of gladness, lifting spirits, spreading cheer, so that in these days of sadness we won't be consumed by fear. In this time of mass confusion, sickness, love, and overwhelm, let's encourage one another, hands not joined but hearts are held.
May we all now join together to recite the covenant of this community. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. I now invite you to warmly greet your neighbors in the chat box. Drop in with a message or a simple hello to let us know you are here with us today.
Come sit on my lap. Come on. Oh, good dog. Oh, that's a lap dog.
Pilot, you ready for a story today? This is the true story of two great friends. A baby hippopotamus named Owen and a tortoise named Mzee. The hippo was not always friends with the tortoise, and he wasn't always called Owen, the hippo. And Owen was not always famous. Here's how it happened. Before the baby hippo became known as Owen, he lived with his mother in a group, in a pod of hippos, about 20 others. And they fed and they wallowed in and around the Sabaki River in Kenya, which is on the east coast of Africa. When he was about 1 year old, heavy December rains flooded the river, and the racing water picked up Owen, who was not little compared to you or me, but was little compared to a hippopotamus, and swept him and his whole family down the river until the water became salty and they had been swept out into the sea. I know, it's troubling. It's a happy story though, Pilot. It turns out okay. And soon, hundreds of villagers and friends were working to rescue this baby hippopotamus. It wouldn't be easy. This hippo was only about 2 feet tall. So Pilot is taller than the hippo. But this baby hippo weighed 600 pounds, which is in fact larger than this dog. The hippo did not like the attempts to be rescued. People would come out with nets for him, and he'd break through the nets, he'd pull off the ropes. It's not easy to rescue a 600-pound baby hippopotamus who does not really want to be rescued or understand what's happening. Finally, a brave visitor named Owen Sobian tackled the hippopotamus. Don't try this at home. And the rescuers were able to catch him. And so when the time came to choose a name, they named him Owen, after the guy who decided, bravely, though maybe foolishly, that he would tackle a hippopotamus to save him. Wrapped up in a net, Owen was put in the back of a pickup and brought to a shady spot. People weren't really sure where to take a baby hippopotamus, so they called a wildlife sanctuary near the city of Mombasa. And Dr. Paula Kahumbo, a manager, immediately offered Owen a place to live. And she explained he couldn't be returned to the wild because he was still a baby. He hadn't learned how to fend for himself yet. And he would never be welcomed into another hippopod. Hippopods, not like church, not like this church. Very territorial, don't like newcomers. So they'd take good care of him. They picked him up and they brought him to the park, and they started to think about how they were going to care for this little baby gigantic hippo, where a large enclosure was prepared for him. Part of the park that had a pond and a mud wallow and tall trees and brush. These are all the things that hippos really, really like. And had a giant Aldabra tortoise named Mzee. Mzee. This is Mzee the tortoise. This is a very, very large tortoise. In fact, all the animals in our story today are larger than Pilot, which is sort of a rare thing as animals go. Mzee, whose name means wise old man in Swahili, was 130 years old. He wasn't very friendly, except to Stephen, his keeper. Stephen would come and tickle Mzee's nose, and this is the only person that Mzee really liked. Again, I do not recommend tickling tortoise faces. When they got there, Owen was weak and exhausted, and Owen scrambled from the truck directly straight over to Mzee, resting in the corner, and lay down next to him, snuggled right up to a tortoise. This is not a thing that happens. In the wild, tortoises and hippos are not like great friends who often cuddle up together. But over the next few days, wherever Mzee would go, the little hippo would go too. This, incidentally, gives you a sense of how absolutely gigantic that tortoise is. That is a 600-pound baby hippopotamus next to it. They got worried because he wasn't eating very much, but as Mzee went, the tortoise would go too. And Owen would eat next to Mzee. The weeks went on and they spent lots and lots of time together. They would swim together. And they would hang out together and visit together. These two creatures became friends. And Owen would nuzzle under Mzee's neck the same way that his keeper would. A sense of trust grew. Now, wildlife experts were puzzled then and are still puzzled now about why a baby hippopotamus and a giant tortoise became good friends in this way. They'd never heard of a mammal and a reptile hanging out together and forming a bond. Owen had suffered a great loss. He had lost his family. He had lost his whole pod of hippos. But with the help of humans who helped him out, with the help of an unlikely friend, Mzee and Owen together did really well. Hey, Pilot, come here. Friends come in lots of shapes and sizes. Friends can be unexpected. Friends can be big, goofy animals like this one. Friends can save your life, literally. And friends can be the ones who just help you out when things are hard. When Owen was washed out to sea, he couldn't get back on his own. It took a whole lot of people to pitch in and help him out. When Owen got to the wildlife sanctuary, it took people helping him out. And when Owen wouldn't eat, it took Mzee showing him how, companioning him, eating the fruits and veggies right next to him. Owen couldn't have made it on his own. And the truth is, none of us can. We need each other. We need each other for warmth. We need each other for laughs. We need each other for life. This community that we've created, this church community that you've invested yourself in, whether we're in person or whether we're meeting virtually, we're a community of relationships. We're a community of friendships. We're a community of connection. Just like Owen and Mzee, some of them unlikely, but all of them real, lasting, and giving life. Right?
Now is the time where we share our joys and concerns from the past week, reminding us that we choose to self-isolate because we care about our community as well as ourselves, and that despite our physical disconnection, we are still connected and we still carry others in our hearts and minds. I will light a few candles for the community at large, and I invite you to share a joy or concern of your own in the chat, being mindful that the chat is public both during and after the service. You are also invited to type I as a substitute for our tradition of raising 2 fingers to indicate that though your joy or sorrow is private, you reach out to us nonetheless. The first candle I light is a candle of support for the many differing ways this sheltering in place is so difficult. For those who live with many and seek a little private space of their own. For those who are alone and crave more personal contact. For those who are connected, but not to those they want and need the most. For those who cannot understand why their loved ones are not with them. For those who cannot comprehend why they must stay away from everyone. And for all of those who agonize that they cannot help their loved ones understand that it is their love for them and for others that must keep them isolated. Our experiences differ, but the challenge is universal. The second candle is a candle of care and support for those who are working not only to help and support us through this crisis, but also to help us come out of it stronger as a society than we went in. I light a candle of hope as we transition from this pandemic sprint to the pandemic marathon. That we continue to care about others as much as ourselves and move with care and caution as we find our way to this next chapter. The fourth candle I light is a candle of sorrow for all those who have suffered or are still suffering violence, inequity, loss, tragedy, or pain of any kind on top of the suffering of this pandemic. May we share your burden in our hearts, even as you must struggle in the loneliness of your unique burden. The fifth candle is a candle of hope and energy that we may not be so consumed by this pandemic that we forget to save some thought, feeling, and effort for the many other crises, inequities, and needs of our fellow humans, as well as the earth that sustains us and its other inhabitants across the interconnected web of life. And the sixth candle is a candle of gratitude that joys and celebrations continue for new life, birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, new jobs, new friends, new loves, new skills and successes, even as we navigate the disappointments that they may not be how we had hoped they would be, and a wish that we continue to find the creativity and gratitude to celebrate and share them nonetheless. And finally, I will light one final candle for all those joys and sorrows which remain unspoken, but are no less real and profound for their silence. Please take 60 more seconds to add to the chat and then join me in our short reflective hymn, number 1009, Meditation on Breathing. Even though we are not currently meeting in person, the work of the church continues. In fact, the scaffolding is up and the building work has begun. If you are able, please keep supporting the work of our church building and the work of the church body with your pledge or donation in whatever amount is manageable for you at this time. You may use online bill pay through your bank by simply directing the payment to Beverly Unitarian Church, or of course, you can always mail a check to the church office. And now, please recite with me our offertory pledge. We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts. And now our speaker, Monica Kling-Garcia.
Beverly Unitarian, it is so great to be here with you all in this virtual space of community and connection. I know in the time before the pandemic, you all would be welcoming me as a guest preacher into your house of worship to pray together in person. Today, I welcome you into my home as you each welcome me into yours. And that's still pretty special. By this point, there's a feeling of normalcy when it comes to online worship, as it's now officially been 2 months since the state of Illinois has issued their official stay-at-home order. In this time of physically distancing ourselves from one another, we have found new ways to be social with our communities, both inside and outside the church. For me, phone calls, video chats, and text messages have all helped keep me connected with my friends and family on a more regular basis. This time of quarantine, where we are socially connected while physically distant, does beg the question, what does it mean to be in community? I found some unexpected inspiration on this topic from the Book of Ruth in the Bible, one of our sources as Unitarian Universalists. You may have heard at least part of the Book of Ruth before, as it is a passage often quoted in weddings. Do not press me to leave you or turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. However, this is not actually a romantic passage, but rather the story of 2 women, Naomi and Ruth, and their promise to be there for one another through difficult times. Naomi was a woman who lived in the city of Moab with her 2 daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah, after their husbands died. The 3 women bonded during this time of grief and loss and became their own tight-knit family. However, during these biblical times, 3 widowed women living together came with hardships. Finding work was difficult, as was finding a new husband to bring them financial and social safety. Eventually, Naomi realized that as a widow of her age, she must return to the town where she was raised because she was too old to remarry, and encouraged Ruth and Orpah to return to their families. Orpah left with great sadness because she knew life was going to be very hard for Naomi alone. Ruth, however, decided to stay. She recognized that together they are a community, a family. Ruth saw that in that moment that Naomi needed someone to go on this journey with her, to do the work in the fields, and someone to care for her. This is where Ruth declares that she will stay with Naomi. Do not press me to leave you or turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Naomi recognized that as much as she wanted to do this alone, she needed the help of her daughter-in-law. She accepted Ruth's offer, and the 2 of them traveled to their new home together. This story is a beautiful testament to those we choose to be in community with. In this story, Ruth saw that Naomi needed a companion on her journey, and Naomi accepted this help. Throughout our own lives, there are times when we are like Ruth, and others where we are like Naomi. Where part of being in community means that there will be times where we need to care for others, and times where we are the ones who need to be cared for. It's in times like these, when crisis is around us, that we feel an increased need to support one another. As humans, we often feel the inherent desire to react to the situation at hand, to do something positive, and engage in activities that give us a sense of control to make the best outcome possible. Things like checking in on people, delivering some groceries, or even sewing cloth masks for those in need. They also highlight something that has been there and been important all along. We need each other, and sometimes we need help. It's easy to think that in order to help someone, we have to do something huge, something that will change a person's entire life. But often, Help can come from an action as simple as seeing where someone is at, reaching out, and going along with them on their journey for a time. In a pre-pandemic world, a 4-year-old named Nora made a difference in someone's life by seeing someone and simply saying hello. Nora and her mom Tara were at the supermarket together on a very special day, Nora's birthday. They turned a corner into an aisle, Nora in her favorite birthday dress, and saw a man in his 80s, looking both angry and sad. Nora saw him and said, "Hello, old person. Today is my birthday." The man looked around, saw she was indeed talking to him, and said, "Well, hello, little lady. How old are you today?" He introduced himself as Mr. Dan, and they talked for a little bit before Nora asked for a picture with him for her birthday. He agreed and smiled for the photo. What Tara and Nora didn't know at that time was that Mr. Dan had just lost his wife of many years, and that photo was the first time he had smiled since her death. Mr. Dan still sees Nora and Tara regularly, and they were all interviewed for the radio show Kind World about their story. When asked why she approached Mr. Dan that day, Nora replied, "I thought he needed a friend because he was sad." Dan reflected, "Nora got me out of the loop, gave me something to live for. It's like the sun came out, you know?" That small action of little Nora saying hello to a stranger at the grocery store helped change Mr. Dan's life for the better. She saw that Dan needed someone to notice him and to be friendly to him, even though he was so desperately trying to go through it alone. As we support each other in our own communities, whether it be family, friends, or neighbors we don't know well, it is important not to forget that sometimes the greatest gifts we can give are not the ones from the grocery store or Amazon. Instead, they are the moments when we make sure someone knows that they are not alone. It's often a lot easier to offer help to someone else than it is to ask for help yourself, though. Whether it's in a world with or without a pandemic, the natural tendency is to want to be someone who can help others, but who doesn't need help themselves. But unfortunately, that's not always how things work out. There are always times in our lives where whatever journey we are on is just simply not one we can go through alone. And yet, when we allow ourselves to not just be there for others or to try to go through it alone, but instead allow ourselves to be cared for by our community, amazing things can happen. A great example of this is the story of Laura, a high school teacher in Arizona. Laura loves her students and loves teaching. When her students accidentally call her mom, she takes it as a badge of pride to know that her kids see her as someone who is there for them and supports them. Her care for her students is the driving force in her vocation as a teacher. But in May of 2019, tragedy struck when her 24-year-old cousin and best friend died from cancer. Laura struggled with the loss of someone so close and had to take leave from the job that she loved so much. She took extended bereavement, leaving her class with a substitute teacher. What she didn't know was that while she was away, her students passed around notebooks every day, writing notes of encouragement and sympathy for their teacher, Laura. As the weeks passed, the notebooks continued to be filled with heartfelt messages, keeping their beloved teacher present in their hearts while she was away. When Laura returned, she was presented with the notebooks, filled with all different handwriting, pens, penmanship, showing the care and support of her students during this difficult time. Laura, the caring person that she is, likely wasn't expecting the kind of support that she got from her students. but was open to receive it. Now, months later, those notebooks still help her and support her as she continues to grieve and heal from her loss. In our own lives, there will be times when we need our community, our people, to help us. This pandemic is a difficult time, and one which will not be over soon. We are all going to experience times when we need help. Whether we are grieving a loss like Laura, or experiencing a big change alone like Naomi, we all have times where we need help from someone else. Other times, we have opportunities to see a need in someone else and help them. Whether it be helping someone close to us like Ruth did, or providing help for someone we don't yet know like Nora did, there will be times when we are able and ready that we can make a difference for someone else in our community. During this time, we will be both the helper and the one being helped. And that relationship, that give and take, that is what is at the heart of community. When we are together, the physical space of church is symbolic of a space where you can come as you are, a place where the members of this community can be together and support each other. In this time of virtual church, that feeling of walking into a space just doesn't happen the same way that it used to. But that community and that support that you experience when you walk in the door, that's the part of community that is present both when we are together and when we are apart. While physically distant, we are still a part of that interconnected web. We may not be able to physically go where you go, but as a community, we can support each other with love and care, both together and apart.
Please join me in singing our closing hymn, We Laugh, We Cry.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. When we believe that sharing is an answer. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer.
Friends, would you please join me in extinguishing our chalices together? Our worship is ended. Our service begins. As we close our laptops and sign off our devices, may we stay connected, knowing that we carry this community, this church, in our hearts wherever we go. May we not only care for others in this time, but allow ourselves to be cared for by those who love us. Be well, and blessed be.
Wait, before you close your laptop or turn off your phone, check your Friday email or grab a pencil for today's Zoom coffee hour link information. See you there.